Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carolyn if you're new here, and I'm very excited about this video. I have decided to read all 6 books that have been shortlisted for the 2021 Women's Prize for Fiction. I'm just doing this for fun. All of these books are ones that I would have want to have read anyway, but I thought it'd be nice to dedicate a whole video and a few weeks to reading the whole shortlist and then wrapping up my thoughts as I normally would in a monthly wrap-up, but then at the end also sharing if I have a winner that I think deserves it the most, or that if I were a judge what I would pick, but then also making a few predictions about which ones I think might win, and if those line up, that would be cool. But I just thought it'd be fun. Obviously, it's been said many times, and it's true, that prizes like this, when it's kind of crossing all different genres and themes and styles, it's nearly impossible to effectively compare them. That's a wide complaint that people have with these types of prizes, because even in this stack we have like generational tales, we have literary fantasy, we have kind of a novel that's the first of its kind, an internet novel, so to compare these books is kind of silly, but I think it'd still be fun to, just for the sake of it, to read these books and talk about my thoughts, and if I do have a favorite that emerges, which I'm sure I will, to just kind of talk about it, and ones that I think are maybe the most deserving of the prize in terms of themes, writing, and doing something kind of funky and fresh, maybe. Who knows? We will see. It's also important to talk about really the controversy that surrounded this prize in this past year, but also in recent years. Hannah from Let's Talk About Books Baby dedicated a whole video to that topic of turfness and TERFs coming out in full force against Torrey Peters being longlisted and against Akwaeke Emezi's nominations in the past. So Hannah definitely did her research, so I will link that video below. But it's definitely important to be aware of these things, because whether you follow prizes or not, which usually I don't, this is really just for fun, but prizes that, or books that get longlisted or shortlisted or win, obviously get a lot of publicity, and publishers put a lot of money into them, and they're really widely circulated. So to know who gets nominated and why, and what names are being circulated out there, is important. And obviously knowing really just who is really vile and offensive is also important to know in the bookish world. So without further ado, let's talk about the 6 books that I will be reading. How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. Unsettled Ground by Clare Fuller. The Vanishing Half by Bennett. Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Piranesi by Susanna, Clarke. And No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. So yes, I am very excited to read through these books and share my thoughts, and hopefully I would love to hear from you as well. Okay, first up, Piranesi by Susanna, Clarke. If you're familiar with my channel, then you might know this is the one book that I already read separate from this video. I read this book in March, and if you've watched my March Part 1 wrap-up, then you will know that I absolutely loved this book. So I'm already starting on a very high note. So let me first just re-explain what this book is about if you haven't watched that video. We are following Piranesi, and he is in this labyrinth, this majestic setting that to him is the whole world. He refers to it as the whole world. And we are reading from his diary entries as he's exploring his surroundings and this labyrinth of colonnades and statues and areas and floors that are oceans and that have galaxies and stars, and it's just so okay. So we are reading from his journal entries, and another aspect of this plot is this one other person that inhabits this world is called the Other. So the Other is working on this big and grand project to uncover kind of the secrets of the world and the universe, and he enlists Piranesi's help to do that. So I don't even know where to start with this book, because I think it is so magical and fantastic. But let's just start with character. Piranesi is the most lovable character I have read in months. Just like, what a breath of fresh air to love a character so immediately. Because we're reading from his journal entries, we really see him in an intimate way. He's so curious, he's so trusting, and he's so just excited and in awe of his landscape. Another highlight of this book is the physical setting, and if you are somebody who wants to feel sucked into a book and into a world and into a setting, and if you haven't felt that way since like you were a childhood reading like big fantasy series, this will give you that. If you are really missing that, please read this because the world is so stunning and Clarke's descriptions are like otherworldly. And if I were to get like a bookish tattoo, it's like this and 2 other books that I would consider. This book is visually and descriptively stunning. This book also has an incredible sense of peace and calm and quiet that is so, so stunning. But that's not to say that this book does not go somewhere, because it does. It goes somewhere, and that piece might get fractured as Piranesi is so curious and he's really making all these observations and keeping all these detailed notes as he's exploring this house that he's in. We're really learning alongside him what this world is and where is he and what does it mean, while still being in awe of the landscape. And I think this book is really about like spirituality and what humans assign divinity to. And Piranesi really makes the house and his surrounding have this godlike quality. And he is just so in awe of his surroundings that it's the most endearing and stunning thing I can't even explain. And if you really are missing like that feeling of magic and whimsy and excitement and curiosity as an adult reader, this is where to find it. Seriously, like I will redirect you here. And just so we are keeping the reviews and the different opinions kind of an open conversation, I will also direct you to KDBooks video about Piranesi. Because while I am raving, he was ranting. And he really hated this book. And even though it hurt me a little bit to watch that video, I was still thoroughly entertained. And he compares Piranesi to a confused buffet attender. I will say no more. You really just have to experience that video for yourself. But while I loved it, there are other opinions out there for you to explore. I have not stopped thinking about this book since I've read it. I love Piranesi. I love the physical setting of this book. I would read another book in this exact same house, in this exact same labyrinth. I just think there's nothing more stunning than this book. So I'm already starting on a really high note, and I know that I might already be biased towards the other books, but I will try to be fair. But just so you know, we are starting with something that is very hard to beat in my opinion. This was like an easy 5-star. I already know it's going to be in my top books of the year, but we're still going to read all the other ones, and I'm also still very excited. I just wanted to start here. Damn Susanna Clarke. I love you. Okay, Unsettled Ground by Clare Fuller. So this is about a pair of twins, Jeannie and Julius. They are 51 years old, and they have lived with their mother Dot in a very sequestered cottage their entire lives. And very suddenly at the beginning of the book, their mother dies. Their mother Dot passes away, and they are kind of left reeling from that grief, but also their mother has been keeping a lot of secrets from them, and they are thrust into poverty, and we're really watching them try to maintain their dignity in their home. And this book is really heartbreaking at some moments, but I think the relationship between the twins is really beautifully done. So I would say this book is an easy book to read, and that's not like a criticism of the writing or of the plot, but I think it's a very small cast of characters. You immediately kind of understand the plot and understand the problems that the twins are going to be facing, and you kind of instantly care about them. So I think it's easy in that way, but I don't think that like the secrets that they're going to be uncovering about their mother, like nothing shocked me. I think it's all fairly obvious what they're going to figure out, but I don't think that's really the point. I think it's about it shocking the twins, shocking Dot's children, because they've lived a very kind of quiet and isolated life, and they thought they knew who their mother was. So even though it wasn't shocking to me, and I don't think it would be shocking to most readers, it's shocking to them, and that's the point. The twins' relationship is really beautiful, so that made it also heartwarming and really uplifting at the same time. This book didn't blow my mind in any way. It is kind of something different and new in the sense that they are very much having a midlife crisis, Jeannie and Julius, but it's a very different portrayal of a midlife crisis, right? Like, it's not about a spouse, it's not about a divorce, it's not about something related to being a parent. It's really about survival. And all of a sudden, they are thrust into these really horrific circumstances that they have no way to prepare themselves for. And all of a sudden, at 51 years old, they have to completely retrain themselves to live a certain way, and they have to all of a sudden fight for something that was always a given for them. So I think it is new in that way. So I really enjoyed reading this book. I don't think it will blow people's minds, but I think it's a really beautiful book, and I very much enjoyed myself. How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. This is a tough one. So we are following 3 generations of women, a grandma Wilma, her daughter, and then her granddaughter Lala. We are mostly following Lala on a very linear timeline, her own story of her and her husband, who is extremely abusive. And they have a child together, and something tragic happens, and we kind of follow that storyline for most of the book. That's our main plot. But then we're also bouncing back in time to Wilma in her early marriage and her relationship with her daughter, and how that really explains the very tense and hurtful relationship between Wilma and Lala, her granddaughter. This book, I really struggled with it at the beginning. It is so overwhelmed with male violence. This is like the most brutal book I've read in a while. It was tough to read. Lala's husband, Adam, is horrific to her, and Jones really kind of goes in and explains all those moments of abuse and really holds nothing back. You really feel Lala's physical pain, so it's so hard to read, and I had to put this book down at some points, but I ended up thinking it was really phenomenal. I think this book really kind of creates the Baxter Beach town in Barbados, and obviously those are our main storylines, but we are kind of bouncing around to different characters who get involved in Lala and Adam's life after something horrific happens. And you really kind of feel this town come to life, and the energy of this town come to life. So that, I think, was really, really well done. And also the character development was like next level. I thought it was brilliant. I think Lala was really well done. I think even Adam was really well done. Really, like, the men are vile in this book. It's so hard to read, and it's like kind of the title of this book comes from this lesson, as if this oppressive male violence is passed down through this line of women as any other like genetic marker. I think is really the lesson, in that women need to heed these warnings, and from their mothers, from their grandmothers, but that they keep getting into these cycles of male violence. I think this book was really well done. It also has some like thriller elements. Our main storyline of Lala, Adam, and their child, and that tragedy really feels it has like thriller-esque moments. And because we're bouncing around to different people, and sometimes we're just dipping into somebody else's mind for a second to look at Lala outside, from an outside perspective, and then back to Lala, and then back to Adam, and then back to Wilma. And when you're bouncing around like that, sometimes you feel like each character is not going to get fully developed. But like, Jones was fantastic at that. I think this was really like a feat, that she made each character feel so vivid and so real and so heartbreaking. I just think this book was brilliant. But oh my goodness, heed those trigger warnings. It is violent. Yeah, I don't know. I struggled with this book, but I also think that like I wouldn't have changed a thing. So I don't know. My mom read this book right after me, and she was like jumping at every moment because of how visceral the pain is that what's happening to Lala. But my goodness, is this a good book? So definitely a worthy contender in my opinion. Oof. No one is talking about this by Patricia Lockwood. So this is the book that is sort of the first of its kind, a book dedicated to the internet and to our modern world. We are following a woman who went viral on the internet, and now she's traveling around making appearances. The writing of this book is fantastic. Such a standout writer, I think. She really is. It's very sparse. It's just like throwing different things at you one after the next to kind of inundate you the way that the internet does. But it's been said time and time about this book, and I think it's true. She is not demonizing the internet. She's not saying it's this villain that's consuming us and that it's a bad thing. She's showing us the good, the bad, the ugly of the internet, and I think that's why this book is so spectacular. She is a modern woman, and we love that. There were parts of this book where I was laughing out loud, I was cringing, I was feeling uncomfortable, feeling seen and heard. It also is kind of split up into two halves. In the second half, something tragic happens in our narrator's family, and she is kind of going home and is sucked out of the portal temporarily to deal with this family tragedy. So I think that part was interesting. I definitely preferred the beginning. I think even though this book's short, it felt a little bit too long for me. The end, I just felt like got a little bit convoluted. And not that a book should win, because it mentions my favorite show of all time, but I think it's an interesting argument to make that this book brings up Naked and Afraid. So you guys might not know me like that, but I started out watching Naked and Afraid ironically, and then very quickly it was not ironic, and it was just a guilty pleasure that I was no longer feeling guilty about, and I wanted to share my joy of this show. And so I marked a page because I just want to read this to you so you can understand how spectacular this book is. When they run out of credible Sasquatch sightings, they turn to the greatest reality show of all time, Naked and Afraid. A man and a woman were dropped naked into the middle of the wilderness, and immediately two things happened. The women started weaving palm fronds, and the man began to go insane from lack of meat. This generally led to him eating some kind of dubious trout and having diarrhea in what the woman would consider to be their front yard. The whole thing would make a spectacular gender reveal party, come to think of it. The mom and dad could appear stripped and mud-smeared before their guests in a luscious suburbia, and if the baby was a girl, palm fronds, and if it was a boy, the dad could shit himself and weep. What a fantastic book this is. I really just think it's genius, and while I much preferred the first half to the second, I still think that this is a book to be like cataloged as the first of its kind, that we'll see a trend kind of shoot out from this book. So it's important to read from that perspective, that she's doing something new. I think more than kind of the other books on this list, this book could also be a great little like collection of stories of like different angles and dark webs of the internet. Loved it. The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. So of course this is probably the most popular book on the shortlist. This follows two twins who grew up in a black community, and after seeing something tragic in their young lives, they run away from home, and then we follow both twins and their respective daughters after one twin chooses to live and pass as a white woman, and the other twin actually ends up returning home to where they grew up with her daughter, who's very dark-skinned. So of course, this book really shines in its writing, in its themes. It explores colorism really, really well, both within and outside the black community. It explores what you might owe to your family members and familial duty. It also explores trying to run from your past and how do you define yourself. All that said, I have to say, this book let me down in a lot of ways. I know that this is a very loved book, and I understand why, but I think my points of frustration are that obviously we're following the twins and then how their lives veer from one another, but I feel like we got little to no information and moments of the twins as children that would explain why her sister choosing to live and pass as a white woman would so haunt her sister, and then why she would pass down that trauma to her child, who would spend her life thinking about her long-lost aunt. I just feel like this book was really kind of going nowhere for a lot of the plot. Like, we get so many moments of the twins' respective daughters and really just like dipping into their lives, and those moments were well done, but I didn't think we needed them. But what we did need was the twins and their relationship and their moments as children that explain this bond and this love and this heartbreak much deeper. The idea of this book is inspired from Passing by Nella Larsen, and while the plot and the writing I think are markedly different because it's inspired by it, it makes sense to compare the two in my head. I read Passing in March, and that book I just thought was so much better in the sense that every single scene, every word even, is there for a distinct purpose. It's so taut, that book. Nella Larsen is leaving nothing to just kind of fill gaps or to fill holes. And that book is so, so powerful because of that. I feel like this book, I just didn't need so much of the daughters, and I needed way more of the twins and of the sisters. I think what was done well was the sister who chooses to live as white, which I'm just not remembering their names. I know one's Stella, and I'm not going back to figure that out. When a black family moves in next door and she has all these anxieties about, will she recognize me as a black woman? I thought that was really well done, of exploring all the complexities of passing as a white woman. But I just don't think this book stood up to the hype for me. Maybe it's just because this book has gotten so much love and praise that I expected a lot more. And even if you put like the convenience of this book aside, there were so many moments that were just so convenient. Like, you're going to run into your long lost cousin. That frustrated me. But if you put that aside, I still just feel like the moments we were given by Brit Bennett were just not the moments I needed or wanted. But I did really like the writing, so I know I'm shitting on this book, but I think the writing was beautiful, and if you loved this book, I get why I would recommend Passing by Nella Larsen. It's a classic, and it's definitely a little bit better than this, I would say. I will definitely read more by Brit Bennett. I know she wrote The Mothers, and people really love that book. Because I love her writing, I will read other books by her, but I think the plot and the character development of these women, like, none of them felt fully realized to me. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Please don't be mad at me. Please don't be mean. Lastly, we have Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Okay, so this book is about a young woman named Gifty, her brother Nana, her mother, kind of her father, and we follow her in her childhood and then through to her as a young adult working in STEM. She's a scientist. So this book is spectacular. Let me just start with the characters, the relationships, the family. I think was so vivid, so real, so full of love and heartbreak and kind of all these real human emotions. And this book, the tragedy of this book is Gifty's brother Nana overdoses on heroin when he's very young, and this book is really like a before this happened and an after this happened, and how this really upended Gifty's life and her mother's life, who then started suffering from chronic depression, and Gifty kind of has to care for her mother. So this book is about kind of the relationship and how that changes when a child has to become the caretaker of her mother, of her parent. And this book has everything that I so wanted the Vanishing Half to have. The Vanishing Half also has that idea of the like before and after something horrible happened, right? Well, at least to one sister, that she felt abandoned, that her sister had left her to go live as a white woman. But what this book had is all of those small moments that we would go back and forth in time and see all these moments of Gifty and Nana as children and the love there. And it was so beautiful to see all these like really little moments of just kind of like kids playing around. So we understand how much it shook Gifty and her entire world to lose her brother in this way. And it really added like so much depth to all of these themes. And a whole nother layer of this book is Gifty's struggle between her faith and science. She grew up in a very religious household. Her mother was very, very religious, and Gifty kind of talks about as she was a child how she so intensely believed in her faith, and then she kind of lost that after losing her brother, and she kind of turned to science to answer all those questions that she used to turn to God for. And as a young woman, realizing that she doesn't have to condemn one or the other to feel valid in her place in either. So I think all those conversations were explored so spectacularly. This is like the first book that's made me cry, and I cannot even tell you how long, maybe ever, other than like My Sister's Keeper as a kid when I read that. I don't know what happened to me. I just think the way this book talks about addiction and mental illness is treated with so much love. And as a kid, kind of wanting to feel angry and embarrassed of her brother, but then realizing that that wasn't going to solve anything, and she had so much love for her family at the same time. So I think that was just really well done and so nuanced, and really shows the complexities of these illnesses. But also how Gifty really has to start caring for people, and as a child, how she had to take on all these extra responsibilities. I loved this book so much, I can't even explain. I will absolutely finally read Homegoing after, this is like one of my favorite books I've read this year, maybe. I just thought it was spectacular. I loved all the themes this book talked about. I cannot recommend it enough, and what a good book to end with on this list. It had all those little moments that I needed of the mother and daughter and the brother and sister to show all that love there, that even when tragedy strikes, you understand kind of the roots of this family that keep them together even when all these horrible things are happening. So, wow. Guys, read this book. Read this book. All right, my friends, it is about time to wrap this video up. Final thoughts, predictions, my top picks. I think overall this was a success. I liked doing this, reading these books as a unit, to just really see where fiction is right now. Obviously this is a very small selection of books, but I don't think I was up for the long list. That's a whole lot of books, but also if there were ones that I just wasn't excited to read, I didn't want to force myself, but all of these books were on my list anyway, so I'm glad to have gotten to them all and read them as a little unit, as a little set, and then just talk about it, right? So I think let's first talk about overall thoughts. I think Unsettled Ground by Clare Fuller, a really phenomenal book. Very complex, shows a lot of emotions, but also one that you can just get into and just read kind of quickly. You get easily sucked in, you care about the characters. So I really enjoyed this. Well, actually, if I were to star rate them, which we've established on this channel I'm not good at, but let's star rate them. I would say this is a solid 4-star. Absolutely enjoyed it. I don't think the writing blew my mind, but it was more about the story and the characters. So I enjoyed this. A 4-star is a very, very good rating for me, so a 4-star. Then we have How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. I would say this is like so close to a 5-star, like a 4.5, I guess, because I can't complicate it more than half stars. 4.5 star, maybe a 5-star. This is why I don't rate, guys, but I think this is like a 4.5 star. I loved it. Brutal, heartbreaking, horrible sometimes to read, but I think the characters are fantastic. It really creates Baxter Beach, Barbados for you. The plot was really, really, really sucked you in, and I just thought it was beautiful, and I really loved the generational aspect of it because I'm a sucker for that, so loved this. Alright guys, The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. So, like I said when I talked about this book, the writing is strong. Absolutely it's strong. The themes, powerful. I will absolutely seek out themes like that in my reading. I just don't think the character development was there. I'm sorry. And also I needed like way more of my just twin moments as children to understand their bond. Just being twins is not enough for me. I need more than that. But I did enjoy reading it. Like I was sucked in. I was interested. I just don't think it had the moments to explain. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it again. I would say for me this is like a 3, a solid 3-star. I just needed more of the little moments of the sisterly love. 3-star. Alright, No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. This is the hardest book for me to give a star rating to, just because I so enjoyed the first section, didn't love the second section, but because it's like that sparse, quick writing, like dips in and out of different scenes and moments on the internet, it's not one that could be like an all-time favorite for me, but it was an absolute ride to read this, and I think this is an important book to see where the trend of fiction writing is going to go. So I would say this is like, again, like a 4-star, really incredible writing. I think she's like a master at writing these kind of small little bits and moments. So definitely an author to watch, themes to watch. I would say this is like a 4-star for me. Let's just get it over with. A 5-star book. I'm not sorry about it. I love this book. I love a little bit of magic. Sometimes I read books. Most of the time I read books where it's just like the monotony of daily life, and I also love that, but to have a little bit of magic and fantastical elements in the most beautiful setting in the world, like, no complaints here. So, 5-star, easy, you knew that. Lastly, Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Absolutely a 5-star, one of my favorite books that I read on this list. Beautiful, loved all the themes. These are themes that like really attract me. Science versus religion, really kind of fraught, but also so much love in mother-daughter relationships and sibling relationships and kind of family dramas. My goodness, I loved this book. So let's start out with predictions. I think picking the Vanishing Half is almost like too obvious, right? Like I don't think they're gonna pick, the judges will go for the Vanishing Half, also because that book has already had like its moment in the sun. I really think that like everyone read that book. It was really everywhere. So to pick that book after the world has mostly read it, I feel like maybe it won't go in that direction. I don't think I would choose, let me just make a little pile. I don't think I would choose Unsettled Ground. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it kind of stood up against the other books. See, this one, I don't think this is gonna win either. I think right now it's still too niche. But if this book was nominated in like a few years, this could have won. I think it's fantastic writing, fantastic themes. I think this one's a little bit too out there for most readers yet, right now. But give it some time, Lockwood, give it some time. They'll come running back to you. But I don't think this one will win. I think between Transcendent Kingdom and How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, this is like a debut author, right? Maybe Gyasi also is already so popular because of Homegoing. But I still kind of think, I don't know, okay, and I don't think Piranesi will win just because, again, it's kind of niche. It's like a literary fantasy. Not a lot of readers, or not everyone loves a fantasy world. So my prediction is one of these two. So we will see. I think maybe Transcendent Kingdom is my final prediction. The winner gets announced on July 7th, and if I'm wrong, it's fine. I'm just guessing. I just think this has very wide appeal, and I think that's something that judges do take into consideration. I think it's really powerful and strong writing, great characters, really impressive themes, and it's all done really well, but also I think this appeals to a wide readership. So this is my guess. Now, if a little old me had to pick a winner, not the Vanishing Half, not Unsettled Ground. The other four, it's tough for me. See, I think if no one is talking about this, if that won, I would be pleasantly surprised. Because I do think this book is like a little gem. Packs a punch in a very small package, but it's not my favorite. But I do think it's very impressive, if that makes sense. I think these three were my favorites to read. I think if any of these three books won, I would be absolutely happy. But I think my two favorites were these, that if I was a judge, I just want them to share it. Very different, right? Like these are two sides of my reading taste. Like a little bit of fantasy magic, but also like a heartbreaking but beautiful family tale. So I can't pick. I'm sorry. I would choose one of these two to win. I know I'm supposed to pick one. Yeah, I can't. No, these are two that I would, either one. If either one won, I'd be super happy. But yes, I am wrapping up this video. Please let me know your thoughts, your predictions if you've read the shortlist, but also if you just read a few of these books, which has like really been one of your favorites. I would love to talk about it. And if you come back here on July 7th, and I was way off base in the Vanishing Half one because it was like an easy win, everyone loved that book. Or if Patricia Lockwood's book won because people are just ready to go there, come back. I would love to talk about it. But yes, this is a fun video to do. I think it's kind of fun to just stay up to date on prizes while also keeping in mind the controversy around the specific prize. Again, Hannah's video will be linked below. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe if you feel so inclined. And I'll be back soon with another video. Bye everyone.